Video games are hard to keep a secret, so a lot of companies don't even really try. But when they do and a leak happens, it's a big deal.
Please stop.
Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the top 5 most controversial recent video game leaks. Starting off with number 5, let's just get the obvious one out of the way. You knew we were going to talk about this as soon as you heard the title. It's The Last of Us Part 2, which, wow. I'm not going to talk about the contents of the leak because we do not want to spoil this game for anybody who is working not to have the game spoiled for them. But wowie, if you want to spoil the game, you can. They actually exploited a vulnerability that previous Naughty Dog games have, which is not good. Like, hackers were able to get into the Naughty Dog servers through this vulnerability that older Naughty Dog games have in their patches, implying that their servers are not particularly secure. Like, if you're able to dig out the login information from patches from other PlayStation 4 games, and you're not changing those passwords pretty damn often using some kind of two-factor, I don't know what to say. Like, it's actually astounding to me how vulnerable Naughty Dog would have to be for this kind of a leak to happen. I mean, there is so much that has been leaked onto the internet, including the ending of the game. I've managed to avoid it, although saying that publicly was probably a mistake. I'm not going to look at my @FalconTheHero Twitter account for at least a few days now that I've said that. Just a quick note for all developers going forward, don't include any Amazon AWS services keys in your patches, because people will use them to get into your AWS. AWS, for people who are unaware, is basically the Amazon cloud for the lay, and often a place where developers commit new patches and keep everything together so the entire company can constantly work, especially during this time where everybody has to work remotely. The bug itself was actually found in January though, so they've had a wide open, huge problem for a long time now. Moving on to number 4, the entire source code for Team Fortress 2 and CSGO were leaked to the internet during April. A lot of people shut down servers because they were afraid of people remotely executing code, which is a legitimate fear. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have in any way, but Valve went ahead and said, this is outdated code. It's like 2017 era code for these games, and it's already leaked onto the internet before. Now, I don't necessarily buy that as a good reason not to be worried about it in any ways, because I promise you that regardless, the current builds could definitely be very different, but also are the same game. Like, they share a lot of code with that leaked source code. Period. I'm not going to go ahead and say I am an expert on this or could tell you exactly what kind of risk that poses, but when there's a big security leak, it does help to lock stuff down. And here's the issue as well, as they're trying to say, oh, don't worry, it's not a big deal, it's not a leak that really should concern you. We're talking about Valve, which is one of the biggest video gaming companies in the entire world, having a security problem. It doesn't matter if that code is up to date. The fact is somebody was able to get it and leak it. That's not good. Apparently, it was leaked when a Source Engine modding community member just decided to put it out there, but they got it, you know? I'm not gonna say that I'm super worried about it or anything at the moment. It was a ways back, and it hasn't been too much of a turbulent era for either of these games. However, any security leak from any gaming company that has your data should concern you, period. At number 3 is Prince of Persia Redemption, and I just gotta go ahead and say, a lot of the stuff that people said about this leak, which is not even that old, I disagree with. Not that it looks good. I definitely agree with the idea it looks good, but let's get into that in a second. But first, a little background information. 8 years ago, a follow-up game to 2010's Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands was being pitched. It was called Prince of Persia Redemption. We have video footage of that pitch. It looks phenomenal. If I could play this right now, I would. It looks like possibly the best Prince of Persia game, in the 3D era at least. It's always been a series that gets almost there, and for me, it looks like it gets there. It looks like the most well-rounded version of Prince of Persia we've ever seen. However, I've seen more than a few people say it's also a little bit too linear for their tastes. And because a lot more games now have open worlds, that this direction wouldn't be what to take. I just want to use the dagger of time to rewind on that and say, Prince of Persia is not Assassin's Creed. I want a roller coaster ride when I play Prince of Persia. That's what works best. If you need to give me some open world-ish gameplay, go the Uncharted 4 route. They handled that really well. But like this Prince of Persia Redemption video, in my opinion, is a little bit reminiscent of if Prince of Persia incorporated some God of War elements to it. And I'm talking about God of War 1 to 3. And I just want to go ahead and say, like, it looks like a phenomenal game. I would buy it and play it immediately. It's so dumb they're still sitting on Prince of Persia, especially when they've been pitched games that probably wouldn't be the most expensive to make. It's clearly not an open world game and it costs way less to make a linear game, and it looks like it would be great. I'm sorry, like, revive this project, Ubisoft. At number 2, this isn't quite the same type of leak we've been talking about during the course of this, but it's a big leak that affected gaming a lot nonetheless. At the 2019 E3, if you attended, the Electronic Software Association of America published a spreadsheet to their website that contained 2,000 journalists. That's every games journalist that went to E3 to cover the gaming everything. You know, the big event of the year, the one that all the games journalists are more or less supposed to go to. They published that spreadsheet with names, phone numbers, home addresses, and other personal information. And now lots of people have that. And I don't know if you've ever paid attention to what people think of games journalists. It's not always good, putting that in the nicest way I can. So yeah, the ESA just doxed a bunch of journalists. Seemingly by accident, but I mean, when an accident is that negligent, like, it's worth being angry about anyways. But this was an overall really bad thing for E3. Even if nothing had happened this year regarding travel and social distancing and all that, they probably would have had to cancel E3 this year. Because let's just be clear, whatever you think of games journalists, there is no such thing as any kind of journalist that wants their personal information on a spreadsheet which is distributed to everyone who is interested in the industry, whether on purpose or by accident. Games journalists don't even often report on the most sensitive information in the games industry. But even so, having an opinion often gets people riled up, let's say. That just sucks. E3 really should be ashamed of that. And finally, at number 1, the Pokémon Company, a subsidiary of Nintendo, had to deal with a Pokémon Sword and Shield leak ahead of the game. Essentially, on Discord, before the game was out, there was a lot of official stuff leaked, which included new details about Pokemon that had not been released or discussed publicly. And that's a lot of, like, what builds hype for Pokemon games is the new Pokemon. So it actually is genuinely easy to understand why the company viewed this as a serious issue. But this became such a big thing that they actually pulled a really in-depth investigation, found the people who did it, and filed a lawsuit in Seattle over it. Now, this lawsuit was filed back in November of last year, and there really isn't any new public information about it, so it's probably still ongoing. Like, sometimes lawsuits can be a pretty long process, especially with something like this where exactly the extent of the damages is not necessarily easy to prove. But whoever those individual Discord users are that they did implicate in this lawsuit, a number of websites were actually identified and blacklisted by Nintendo, including one that posted their own apology called F Nintendo, a website out of Portugal. Now, it's also important to note that F Nintendo's name is not like F Nintendo. Like, they weren't being deliberately antagonistic towards Nintendo. But they did jump the gun and publish the leaked information. However, they weren't the source of the leak. I don't know exactly how far Nintendo will go with the people that were the source of the leak, but after all of this happens, it really shows how serious Nintendo takes this sort of a thing. Very serious. That's all for today, though. Obviously, there have been a lot more leaks. but these are the 5 most recent controversial ones we could think of. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, don't forget to enable all notifications, and we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.